Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. Hi, I'm 30 female. I got married when I was 20 to my high school sweetheart and had 2 kids within the following 2 years. However, my husband turned out to be an alcoholic who would constantly cheat on me. I was dealing with all of that because I had 2 children and was fully dependent on him. But then he started physically abusing me, and so I couldn't take it anymore and left with my children to my mother's house. My mother was unhappy with us moving in and she made sure she knew it. She would constantly belittle me for being fat and being incapable of holding a husband now, just to annoy me. She would keep in touch with my husband and send money to him whenever he asked. She was extremely rude to my children, hence I quickly knew I had to leave. Within about a year, I found a good job and slowly moved out with my kids. My mom was suddenly more mad. She said that I would not be able to sustain and that I was going to fail as a mother too. It really hurt me, but I was very determined for my children. I found a decent 1-bedroom and my kids and I decorated the place and life was slowly getting better. But suddenly, one day I got a knock on the door from CPS. Turns out somebody has called them and told them that the house was very badly maintained, had a mold problem, and hence the kids had to be rescued from there. I immediately knew it was my mother who had made that call. Nevertheless, I asked the people to do the whole check as they pleased, and they were very satisfied with it. She tried other random ways to make life difficult for me. She somehow found where my kids studied and tried to pick them up from school. However, the school notified me immediately and was able to stop it. This went on for a bit before it completely stopped. Another time, she sent the guy she was dating to my workplace and harassed me for money to compensate for the 8 months that we lived at her house. He followed me home as well, but as the place was crowded, he didn't try to physically do anything to me. She made me fearful of living in my own house. I had started doing well at work and our standard of living improved as well. We moved to a bigger house, and the kids were doing well. A month ago, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened the door, I realized it's my mother. She looked pretty ragged and smelled of cigarettes. She was carrying a big rucksack with her. Turns out she had to sell her house because she got cheated in a gambling game and was living on the streets. Then she said, "I remembered I have an ungrateful daughter who has never invited me to her house. So I'm here now. I'm going to live here." I was taken aback and physically blocked the door from letting her get in. I told her that there was no way she was going to live with us after all that she did to my kids and I. She started screaming and crying and created a ruckus. She called me a bitch for not allowing her to stay and said that I was going to burn in hell. I just shut the door. Am I the a-hole? Update. The following week, she turned up again with a few of her homeless buddies, drunk out of their minds and puking everywhere. They were banging on the door, peeing on my porch, and screaming cuss words. I immediately called the cops who arrested them. OP, starting your story, I thought your husband would be the main a-hole in it, but turns out I was wrong. He is an a-hole, but your mother is the main a-hole here. She absolutely sucks, and she's everything a mother shouldn't be when her child is going through the things you've been through. You left your husband because he was abusive to you. That's a very valid reason to leave a marriage. Your mother should have been a strong supporter of that decision, but she was not, and instead she treated you miserably, and when you did leave, she continued to try and torment you. Order a restraining order against her and cut her out of your life. I wish you a good and better life ahead, and you are doing a good job for your children. Story 2. I, 28 female, am a single mom of 3 kids. I met my daughter when I was 22, volunteering in a mentor program. Her biological mom asked that I take her in for a while she was having a hard time, so I agreed to become a foster parent. Then 2 years ago, we got the paperwork together for me to become her official guardian. I plan to adopt when kiddo is old enough to tell me that's what she wants. Last year, I got a phone call from my daughter's caseworker informing me that her biological mother had another child and she wanted him to be placed with his sister. So I took him in too. I didn't plan on having any other children, but I met someone. It didn't last long, And long story short is that I have a first grader, a toddler, and I'm 25 weeks. My sister Bree, 34 female, always loved hanging with my kids whenever she had the spare time. She's been struggling with infertility since she and her husband started trying for a baby 8 years ago. And I can tell how badly she wants to be a mom. I really do hope that someday it does happen for her because it's all she's ever wanted. Since I announced my pregnancy though, Bree has been kind of distant. I thought that maybe it was just life stuff, or I was being overly emotional due to hormones. So I didn't really press her on it or anything and went about things as usual. Our mom invited us all to dinner the other night, so I got my kiddos settled with a sitter and drove to my mom's place. Dinner went mostly fine, but Bree kept giving me looks every time someone brought up the pregnancy. And towards the end of the night, she asked why I even adopted 2 children if I clearly had no trouble making a baby of my own. I told her that when I started fostering my oldest, it was just to give her a safe place to live until her mom could get things sorted. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and now her brother is with me too. I love my children and I'm happy to be their mom, but it wasn't my intention in the beginning to adopt via foster care. I wanted their biological mom to work things out, and my heart genuinely hurts for her because she wasn't able to do that. Bree then said that it feels like I'm rubbing my kids in her face. She told me that it isn't fair that I basically had 2 kids fall into my lap, and then decided to be reckless and get knocked up too, all while she's been trying for years to have a child with no luck. She said it's cruel and unfair that I took 2 babies from the system that could have gone to parents who deserved them, all while being able to easily have one on my own. I ended up telling her that while it sucks, it's not my fault that some people want kids and can't have them, and that her infertility baggage isn't really my issue. Our mother asked me to leave, and the next day called me to tell me that I was being unnecessarily cruel to my sister when I know what she's been going through. Now, I don't know if what I said was out of line. Information she and her husband have said that they would prefer not to foster because they don't want to endure the heartbreak of caring for a child that may always want to go back to their biological parents. I think it's why they haven't adopted yet either. I try not to be judgmental about either of those choices because I know they're hurting and fostering isn't easy. I feel people should go into it with the mindset of providing a home for a child in need instead of having a child in your home to fulfill your own needs. Not the a-hole OP, but your sister and mom both are. It's unfortunate that your sister has not had any success in having children, but you certainly have no control over that. Her remark about you taking 2 children out of the system is ludicrous. Did she even ask if she could foster your daughter when you first brought her home? No. It doesn't sound like she's made any effort to do so. Your sister is understandably upset with the situation, but that doesn't give her the right to chastise you for opening your home to 2 children or being able to get pregnant. She absolutely was dumping her baggage on you, and you were right to refuse to take the insults and her baggage. Your mom is understandably sympathetic to your sister's infertility, but it's unreasonable for her to expect you to refrain from giving someone back what they throw at you. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. I feel for your sister, but you are not wrong. Blaming you for her inability to have children is out of line. What are you supposed to do? Apologize for having a big heart by giving love and shelter to 2 children that desperately needed it? Apologize for getting pregnant and sorry sis for not asking you first? Your mother isn't being fair either. They're both jerks for being mad at you. As a child-free person, I totally get this. And actually, my sister has fertility issues and has wanted a baby since she got married 12 years ago. This year, I actually got myself sterilized to make sure I would never have kids. Well, I knew telling her would go in any direction, and whatever direction that was, I was prepared to deal with it to best make her comfortable. She actually surprised me and said that her issues are her problem, not mine, and that she will support me in any way. Not once has she put me down for giving up my ability to have kids, when she struggled with it for so many years. I can't have children, and honestly, before I ever started trying to conceive, I just assumed that I could have children. I think lots of people are the same, so I do have some sympathy for people who are learning this. It's definitely an adjustment. However, that's absolutely not an excuse to be a dick about it. It's awful and forces you to reassess your whole life, but ultimately you have two options: accept it and move on, however that looks for you, adoption, therapy, etc., or be miserable. Sadly, some people go down the miserable route and then do their best to suck the joy out of everyone around them too. Story 3. I have a 9-year-old son and a 13-year-old stepson, and I'm currently pregnant with mine and my husband's first child together. My stepson and I have a very cordial relationship, but he prefers to keep me at a distance. I've always respected his boundaries. For my first sonogram appointment, my husband couldn't attend. The boys both have summer activities during the week. The plan was for me to attend the appointment alone, but at the last minute, I decided I didn't want to be alone and asked my son if he wanted to go to my appointment, and he did. I picked my son up early and took him with me to my doctor's appointment. Afterwards, we went and got ice cream and then picked my stepson up from his activity at the normal time. My son excitedly showed my stepson the sonogram, but my stepson was quiet and didn't show interest. Later after dinner, my husband asked me to talk with him. We sat down and he asked why I took my son but not his to my appointment. I said I wanted someone with me because it was a big moment in my life. Since he couldn't make it, I took my son, who I'm very close with me as emotional support. I also pointed out that his son didn't seem particularly interested. My husband said his son was very upset and spoke to him when he got home about how hurt he was that my son was invited and not him. I said I wasn't invalidating his feelings, but this was my medical appointment, and I made this decision for my comfort. I get that the kids come first 99% of the time, but I feel like my medical appointment about the pregnancy inside my body is very personal, and I should be able to do what makes me most comfortable. My husband got really quiet. He said, "I understand how you feel." Then he walked away. He didn't say anything to me this morning when he left for work, and he took my stepson with him, which is weird because usually I drop off both boys. I need an impartial take. Am I the a-hole? Now for some comments. You're the a-hole. Why wouldn't your stepson keep you at a distance, assuming he actually is? And it isn't just your perception. From your description, I think what you decided was disinterest was actually hurt. Your stepson was hurt at being excluded from seeing his sibling's sonogram, while your son wasn't. I can't help but wonder if the behavior you label as keeping you at a distance is actually either hurt or a self-defense and coping strategy because he's felt excluded in the past. You're the a-hole. Look, it's generally thought that a step-parent treats a stepchild like their own kid. As both kids are getting a new sibling, it would have been better to ask both kids if they wanted to go to the appointment. Maybe this clearly preferential treatment is part of the problem with your relationship. You're also a major a-hole for thinking of a 9-year-old as your emotional support. Do not use your kids as emotional support. You're the a-hole. Not quite for the reason you asked about though. It is totally inappropriate to use your 9-year-old as an emotional support person. If this was a family event, take both boys if they are interested. If this is not a family event and is something private and personal as you said, it is not appropriate to make your 9-year-old your emotional support or buffer in an emotionally charged situation. Aside from that, you should have taken both boys for ice cream after the stepson's extracurriculars.